All right, we've got Lin Hlaing here, a student from Coppell High School, graduated last year. And man, you are at Cornell University. Thanks so much
Yes,
for being
sir.
part of our class. That's awesome.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here. Definitely had some great memories in incubator. Still talk to the friends I made in that class very regularly. Yeah, you guys are in the right place if you're pursuing something in finance or business. I just gotta tell you that.
Awesome. Well, an
Yeah.
incubator was a class they don't offer here any longer, but it was where we
Mhm.
created a business and we launched it and we did all that. And you competed against other teams. And there was a
Yeah.
huge, like, Shark Tank style presentation at the end. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It was really interesting. But now you were at Cornell, by the way, for my students who don't know this, is an Ivy League school. There's like, how many Ivy League schools are there?
Eight of them. Yeah.
Eight
Mhm.
schools, and they are incredibly difficult to get into. Dude, I mean, I know you're a smart kid, but man, there's a lot of smart kids out there. How did you get into Cornell?
Well, uh, college applications is always like a crapshoot nowadays. There's definitely a lot of random variables. There's a lot of smart kids in my grade who I definitely think deserve the spot more than me. And looking at a lot of people here, I still say the same thing. Just I would recommend catering or crafting your application is something that you're good at or you're interested in. People talk a lot about being a well-rounded applicant, but
Yeah.
it's also important to have these things called spikes, which means there's something you're very good at. So, and crafting your application around that. So in high school, I did a lot of work with hotels, but as part of a nonprofit, and I also worked in the food and beverage industry. So I was a cook at Biscuit Bar, which is next to CHS. If any of you guys
Okay,
know
cool.
that? Yeah. So I applied as a hospitality management major, which statistically has a higher chance to get into than other majors. And the admissions office for that major kind of looks for like a fit-based profile instead of just relying on grades and SAT scores too much. So, you played your strengths is what I'm saying. And when you get in, you can transfer very easily. So right now I'm gonna next semester I'm basically transferring to computer science and economics, which is at one of the harder schools. That basically has like a 5% lower acceptance rate. So I just gave myself,
So you
a
looked
five.
you looked at the majors and you looked and saw that hospitality would be an easier major to get accepted to Cornell instead of computer science and engineering. So you went
Yeah,
hospitality
economics, yeah.
with the intent, I'm sorry, computer science economics
Yeah.
with the intent of switching once you were there out of the biscuit bar hospitality world here and into
Yeah.
the so is that do colleges know that's a strategy now? Is that or were you the first guy
Um,
to think about this?
Yeah, so about a fifth of Cornell students transfer from their original major. So it's not like I mean people know it's a strategy. It's not like widely known. It would be easier at other schools. So Cornell and University of Pennsylvania is the only two schools in the Ivy League that has like specialized colleges. So it's a bit harder to pull off at a school like this. Although, I looked into it and it wasn't that. But if you're looking at schools like UT Austin, University of Michigan, Berkeley, these are schools with like specialized colleges that it's kind of hard to transfer in between.
Okay.
Um, if you're looking at a more liberal arts college or like Yale, Harvard, Princeton, they have one singular undergraduate college and you can switch your major at will.
Okay.
So if you're applying to those, I recommend you apply for the least applied for a major because it makes you stand out as an applicant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you obviously had a good GPA. You obviously had probably good test scores, correct? But there are a lot. I think when my debate team would debate at Harvard, I remember them telling us some kind of stat that was like 89% of valedictorians got rejected or something, some kind of crazy number like that, right? What do you think on your, I mean, other than being like an incredible cook at the biscuit bar, what else did you put on your resume or on your application that you thought maybe had you stand out a little bit?
Well, I actually got a letter from, by the way, Capel's a great school for getting into these schools. About our valedictorian last year actually got into Harvard, Yale, Stanford, bunch of great schools.
Wow.
But just a disclaimer, people here are the population here is like heavily skewed towards boarding schools. I have met like two kids from public schools. That's not to discourage you
Wow.
guys. That's
Wow.
just to say the system is highly rigged. I
That's
would
not good. That's not
I
fair.
would I
That makes me mad. We lose you?
with like the top 30th percentile of kids here. It is we learn in such a highly competitive and constructive environment. Capel prepares you a lot for college. Um, and a lot of these kids, I'm not saying they're not here because of their merit, but to speak frankly, the prestige of their private schools have play a lot into these roles. I've talked to people who have admitted their counseling offices have direct ties to these Ivy League admissions offices.
Yeah.
But focusing in on your question, my admissions officer actually replied, writing a handwritten note about my application, and she said specifically, showing initiative, so doing something like a nonprofit or starting a side project or a passion project.
Wow.
With my thing, I worked on recycling soaps from or toiletry from hotels and motels. So because you leave a room and they have to discard the soap as part of their hygiene protocols. So instead of making that go to waste, basically melt it down, make it into renewed soap bars, and we'd ship it to like very rural regions in India, so Andhra Pradesh and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that plays so well right into hospitality school too. Like,
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
hotel. Like, I mean, why not, right?
yeah.
I mean that's great. That is so interesting. And last year I know that the clubs that were here, with Prabhov and Kavin, they were doing the charitable foundation, the charitable investments club.
Totally. Yes.
I know Dylan Patel is taking that on now too. Those kinds of things. You're saying,
Yep. Definitely.
man, those are, if you can get those, but it's difficult because Lynn, some people, I mean, they may not have the time. They are playing a sport. They are taking high level classes. They maybe have a side job to make ends meet so they can, whatever. And then to go have some other type of volunteer thing, it might be too much for some students. Do you feel like some of those things are tough on some parts of the population?
Definitely. What I tell myself is there's no free lunch. You like even yeah, it's insane. Like the how like college admissions works now, it's insane. It's so competitive. I'm getting totally honest, like you need to have like a burning fire inside of you to
Yeah.
tell you to keep going at it. So you need like you're handling grades, side jobs, extracurriculars. Like this is
Right.
if you're not doing it, someone else is doing it. That's
Right.
just a hard fact. Like even here it's so difficult. So like Capel's Charitable Investments Club. So we have multiple finance clubs like that. We have a student investment club, a student quantitative investment club, all these finance clubs they have like a sub 3% acceptance rate. So even after you get into, your target college or whatever, you're still going to struggle to reach a higher place. I mean, this is just like a cycle. I spoke to a senior who kind of gave me advice on this. I got rejected from about every finance club on campus to be yeah, but I'm also a first semester freshman, so it's kind of expected. But
Yeah.
I spoke to a senior, and what he said really struck with me, and I think I'm gonna listen to it for the rest of my life, because he said control the controllables, right? So you do what you can,
Hmm.
what's in your locus of control essentially, and the rest of it is just the rest of it. It lets you focus your efforts in on like what you can control, and you don't wonder about like, oh, are they going to accept me or are they not? It's a very useful advice
Wow,
that
it sounds like a fraternity or something. It sounds like some kind of really prestigious fraternity to be part of an investment club at a college. That's
yeah,
odd.
it's insane. They a funny story, one of the interview rounds, they took me into a really dark room and they started asking me like random, like super out of pocket questions. They're like, tell me a joke. Who's your least favorite member in this club? Then they had a fake fire alarm go off. It is like almost like hazing into a fire. It's the culture here is, there's something that can be said about it. But yeah,
Wow.
all these clubs, they're very exclusive.
And is that is
Had
that is being part of one of those clubs the track to be able to work on Wall Street or be some kind of big shot finance person?
yeah, so investment banking is a very coveted career at this
Yeah,
school. So
sure. Especially in New York where you're at.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of kids are gunning for it. And like I said, in life, you're gonna see, even after college admissions, you're gonna try hard to get into these clubs, and then there's even like another rung on the ladder. Now you have to network for internships, then you have to try to compete for a full-time offer. But don't let that discourage you. I
Yeah.
mean, I like to think about, my mom, my parents, like I keep telling myself I'm gonna buy them BMW, I'm gonna buy them BMW, like that keeps me going. Yeah, you gotta have something
Okay.
that, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And
um,
speaking of finances, I mean, I tell my students a lot, my very first semester in college, I got a credit card. I maxed it out. I did stupid stuff financially. I took on probably more student loans than I probably should have. I leased a car right out of college with a job and with my college degree. I made some poor financial positions so that when I wanted to go start investing at 23 or wanted to go buy my first condo, I just couldn't do it. Like I had barely had my head above water. What are your thoughts on being a freshman in college and the financial strains that come with it?
yeah, so definitely look into financial aid before you even apply anywhere. The good thing about private schools or Ivy Leagues specifically is they are very generous with their financial aid. Like I don't mind
Wow.
sharing my financial aid details. So I'm basically paying about $21,000 a year
Wow.
to which compared to like
Yeah.
um at UT Austin's about 35,000 all in with housing and everything. So yeah, if you wanna attend, they will get you here. It is not a problem. They don't let that discourage you from applying. What I advise against is applying to a lot of out of state publics. So places like University of Virginia, University of Michigan, Berkeley, they are not as generous. They will probably make you pay the sticker out of state price.
Yeah.
In terms of like spending and stuff, a lot of kids here do a thing where their parents give them a specific amount of money for the semester. And some kids burn through it all. Some
Right.
kids space it out, they budget themselves, but this is kind of where you see those personal budgeting skills come into play. In terms of credit, I recommend opening an account with Discover with this card called the secured card. So what a Discover secured card does is you deposit the amount you want your line of credit to be. So if you want your line of credit to be $300, you deposit $300. Then after 6 months of consistent on-time payments, you will get your deposit back and you can graduate to an unsecured card. This is an excellent way to build credit when you're just first starting out.
And your maximum you could spend would be $300. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't use credit just yet, but this is just kind of just to get me a head start just going. So I would pay for everything on this card
That
like
does.
when
That feels kind of like a baby step into credit cards.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't have the baby step. I was living in San Diego, go Padres, and I was traveling to LA, and we were swiping like, I mean, it was like, hey, let's go eat here, let's go eat there. I mean, it was tons and tons of of eating out. So
Yeah.
but so how is Cornell? Like how do you how are the classes? Are they killing you? Are you like so at Capel, kids come in at 8:50 and they leave at 4:30 or 4:10 or whatever it is, right? I mean, like you're all day long. How is college different?
Yeah, college is gonna be a lot dependent on you. Class, you have about 3 hours of classes a day, if even that. Some of my friends have basically a 3-day weekend with no classes on Friday.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so you're gonna be a lot more professors are gonna be a lot more hands off. They're gonna give you a lecture. They might give you a daily assignment or not. You're gonna know your teachers a lot less personally, and a lot of it is gonna come from you to study on your own. So I know a bunch of kids who did great in high school here that are totally struggling now because they have no work ethic or they haven't developed a work ethic yet, and they
Right.
don't know how to basically study on their own.
Yeah.
And what Capel does that's so great is AP classes are highly structured towards how college is supposed to be, which I guess it is their purpose, but they do it really well. So
Yeah.
um, a class I can just throw out is like AP World History with Mr. Blake. I would say is he teaches in a way that like really prepares you for college. I feel like it's very reflective of what you're gonna experience in college. But overall, right now, since I'm in the hospitality management program, it's pretty really way easier than Capel. And this is a
Wow.
sentiment. Yeah, yeah,
Cornell is easier than Capel, said here first by Lin Hlaing.
yeah. It's actually a lot of people share the same sentiment. I know a student a few years above me, Mr. Andrew Tao, he's at Princeton, and he said the same thing. I know Veda, she's at Stanford right now. She's saying Stanford's not, yeah, a lot of
Stanford's
first year.
not hard. Wow.
It really does depend on major though. So once I switch to CS economics and I'm taking like linear algebra, discrete math, then it's really gonna kill me. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I'm
What
prepared for it.
yeah, I mean, like there, so let's say I have a student who is in here and they are in regular classes and they're going to be going to University of North Texas next year. No offense, that's a great school. I'd recommend my kids go there if that's the
Sure, I have a
opportunity
lot of friends
scholarship
there.
wise that they can. What would you recommend to a high school student who maybe isn't getting those high level AP courses and they're going to be going to college and having a big transition? What recommendations would you give?
Okay, so like I said, self-studying is very important to how you're going to succeed in college. So I recommend like just over the summer finding a skill or something that you can self-learn just to practice, doing that kind of work. Um, in addition, know kind of what you want to do, because I feel like one of the biggest lies I've been told in high school is like you have time to figure it out, or even like people here kind of struggle with that, right? I mean, yeah, you do have time, but if you want to be really competitive in the job market, the recruiting timeline has moved up a lot. So to be specific, investment banking, which I know a lot of kids in your class probably want to go
Yeah,
into.
right.
Yeah, the investment banking timeline, they start recruiting sophomore fall,
Wow.
right? Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, it is. So our career counselor made a joke that like if JP Morgan could go to her son's elementary school and start recruiting, then like she wouldn't even be surprised. Like it's gone really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely know what you want to do,
Yeah.
especially if you want to go into a very super competitive field like investment banking, management, consulting. Timelines really moved up.
Okay. All right. Let's move on here. I've got my my time clock here. I'm going to set my time
Cool.
for 1 minute. We do our a speed round here of looking at these different
So
terms. And
just
I
to
know
clarify,
you've
you're
always
gonna go, then
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah, and
go a
you are
minute.
always one of
Okay.
the guys in my incubator class who always was interested in investing. You always kind of talked about markets, and we always kind of had good discussions about that. Sometimes when it was through Zoom, so it wasn't as great as classroom, but it was like it was what it was. And I know you guys would kind of speak up and give me your thoughts on things. This lesson plan that they're looking on this particular week are all of the funds that you can invest in that are not like single stocks or single bonds, or they're diversified funds. And so looking first at diversification, why do you think diversification is so important? Timer starts now.
Yeah, so statistically, the stock market on any day has a 54% chance of going up, right? And there's these things called sector specific returns. So some sectors that number is a lot higher, and some sectors that number is a lot lower. And there's a bunch of factors outside of just statistics, just random factors that attribute to the success of a stock. So mathematically speaking, the more diverse you are, the higher the chance that your how should I say, horse in the race is basically going to win.
Okay.
It might decrease your maximum potential returns, but it is the best way to minimize risk.
But Lynn, it's not sexy. Like, when I invest in the one stock and it goes through the roof and I'm at the country club going, woohoo, and you're getting your 8% on your index fund, you're not as cool as me.
Yeah, so a common philosophy I subscribe to is that if you're making high returns very quickly, you're not investing, you're gambling. Yeah, investing is making consistent returns, but over a long period of time. So yeah, so I say that.
Okay. So let's look at sectors. You talked about that a second ago. Man, what the heck are sectors and maybe what are sectors right now that you think are good ones to look into?
Yeah, so sectors are basically not, I was about to say asset classes, but they're basically different areas of focus that a stock can be. So for example, Apple is in the tech sector, Exxon's in like industrials and energy, and um basically a lot of sectors, like I said, are cyclical. So meaning when one sector goes up, another goes down, and there's basically a pattern that can span multiple months or multiple years that a lot of these sectors follow. So right now, past few years, tech has been obviously the hottest, trendiest sector, but right now tech is in a slump. So I follow, this other philosophy. It's, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. So even in a bear market is a great time to average down on your positions, and tech is something I still believe in. So honestly, that's what I would advise going into right now. I think you're getting a lot of good stocks at a discount price.
Okay. Do you like and by the way, I think you're right. We talk about this in my class. Warren Buffett, incredible bear market investor. Why is it that in Wall Street they have a big bull? Why not have a big bear? I mean, the fact that you could buy a stock at a discount seems like a much better thing than buying a
Exactly.
stock when it's on its way up and everybody's, buying to be content, potentially be the greatest fool buying it at the. I mean, think about the poor kid who paid 450 for GameStop, right? I mean, you're like, I mean, that guy's like, I mean, that's a horrible buy, right? What do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think? What are
So
your,
what?
yeah, what do you, I mean, why don't they have a bear in Wall Street? Why do they have a bull?
Um, yeah, I guess just if you look at public sentiment, like the average person is going to be, the higher the price is, the more valuable, the better the company. It's just how the public perceives stocks. But the more educated you are, of course, like people in your class,
Yeah.
you'll know the truth is otherwise.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing is like, people panic, be greedy, like when other people are being greedy, you get out of some sectors. I think that's interesting what you're talking about there. All right, index funds here. You got 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, so a lot of index funds are a great way to basically track how a specific industry or like a basket of stocks are doing. So if you guys take economics, like cost of basket of goods, you can kind of relate it to an index fund. The most popular index being, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, S&P 500. A lot of these indexes will basically give you a quick overview of how the market's doing. However, if you want to get exposure into this, I recommend going and buying an exchange traded fund, because they're more liquid than an index fund, meaning you can basically sell off your positions really quick, which I think we're going to get into in a few
Yeah,
slides.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and that's a distinction between index funds, But I remember my mom always talking about how she, index funds for Vanguard stuff and all that. You have to go directly to Vanguard to buy those, right? You can't go on to like, can you buy a Vanguard index fund that's not an ETF on Robinhood? Is that right?
No, yeah, you have to open an account with them, and then you need to basically decide how much money you want to put in them, and then you have to also have like a management fee you have to pay.
Right.
So Vanguard manages a lot of people's 401ks, Vanguard, BlackRock, these are huge asset management companies. And um, of course, they're responsible for a lot of Americans' pensions and retirement funds. So index funds are a critical part of the economy.
Right, absolutely. And that's interesting because like on my Robinhood account, I don't have to be a member of Vanguard to go get it, which would
Yeah.
allow me to own an ETF, which essentially is pretty much the same thing, right? Or what's the difference here between ETF and index funds?
Yeah, so ETFs are else basically my favorite class of investments because they give you exposure to a diverse basket of companies while also maintaining liquidity. Now, liquidity is something that's very valuable in investing because it determines how fast you can get in and out of a position. My favorite ETF of all time is TQQQ. So TQQQ is a 3x leveraged ETF, and I really love leverage. There's some controversy on like if they're good or bad. Specifically, I can talk about how volatility drag works on a leverage ETF. So let's say the stock, it's based off daily performance, right? Stock goes down 10% in a day. Your ETF is going to lose 30% of its value. It recovers 10%. The next day, it's only going to go back 21%. That's something called volatility drag. However, the higher the price of the NASDAQ, the lower the leverage ratio of the exchange traded fund. And what they do is they're going to re-leverage from their cash reserves, and it exponentially increases the potential gains. It is a super popular ETF in the finance industry. I know a lot of investment banking analysts, coming alumni from the school, that are dumping their entire bonuses into TQQQ right now because of how cheap it is. $17 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I bought S triple Q, and I had
Oh
that.
wow.
I did. I had that for a while, and it's gone way up. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
I think I just sold it the last week for $63. I think I bought it for under 20. I don't know, something like that. But my buddy at JP Morgan, he was like, do not get into that. Like he's like, get out of that position. I don't think those guys, like he works with people who have 25 million and up, and he is like, that makes him, that's too risky for him. That's too but you're young, you're young.
Yes.
You take
Yeah.
these big risks. But the
Mhm.
53-year-old investment banker's like, no, dude, that's way that for 47-year-old Simpson, that's too risky. Why do you think he says this?
Yeah, so a lot of what investing has to do is with age. So depending on your age, you're going to make drastically different decisions from your peers. If you can afford to risk it because you're younger and you have time on your side, just go into high beta positions, which means lots of volatility, but also higher potential for return. There is no reason you shouldn't, because like I said, a lot of these the stock market is a generally uptrending market, and a lot of these ETFs will expose you to that uptrend. The only risk with a lot of these ETFs is that you suffer a lot in where a downturn is supposed to happen, and that would harm you highly if you were a lot older and you're trying to save for retirement. So if you're young, logically speaking, there's no reason you shouldn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to go over to Dave Ramsey's favorite thing here. He loves mutual funds, talks about them all the time. And I mean, I own a few through my Fidelity account and different things, but what are mutual funds to you?
Yeah, so mutual funds are kind of what I would say like a less sexy index fund. It's a lot like it's same thing. Companies like BlackRock, JP Morgan, their wealth management divisions manage different classes of this, and it will pull together a number of asset classes. So it doesn't have to be just stocks. It can be bonds, it can be maybe even alternative investments like private equity. Uh, a lot of these cater to high wealth individuals, kind of, but they also, like I said, manage 401ks and pensions. I sometimes log into Vanguard and check my dad's 401k and see how he's doing, just for fun.
Your dad lets you log into his 401k and check it?
I did his tax returns in high school, so yeah.
You did. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. What advice do you give your dad?
Um,
Does he
I
listen?
told him to use I told him to use TurboTax essentially because he was using this like really archaic like tax return system, and I was basically just say, come on, man, time to make the switch. Um, but yeah, there's some like legal jargon that I helped him with because English isn't his second language, but he's a very
Gotcha.
intelligent guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And by the way, REITs are one of my favorite. I own rental properties, like literally rental properties, but I also love REITs, and so does Warren Buffett and other people, and we've talked a lot about it. What are REITs and why are they so great?
So REITs give you exposure to real estate market, obviously. And there's actually a new types of these REITs. I wouldn't call REITs, I would call them actually like syndication deals. So there's this new startup called Cadre. It's started by a Harvard alum, ex-Goldman. It basically allows you any retail investor to buy into commercial real estate. So
Yeah.
let's say you're trying to buy a piece of commercial real estate, but you're trying to raise capital for it. So you basically list it on his website, and a bunch of retail investors can buy into it, and you can own a piece of commercial real estate, which is typically reserved for accredited investors, meaning investors who are pre-registered, they have high net worth, things like that. But if you want me to speak on more traditional forms of REITs, there's publicly traded REITs that are kind of like ETFs. There's also public REITs that are non-traded, so they kind of are structured like mutual funds where you need to open an account with Vanguard, BlackRock, whatever, to buy into them, and these have management fees. And there's also these things called private REITs, which have less jurisdiction by the Securities Exchange Commission,
Yeah.
but you also need to be an accredited investor, and they're riskier and more illiquid as a result.
Yeah.
But they're exposed to a lot of research tools and basically private behind the doors knowledge that you wouldn't typically get from a public REIT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And by the way, when I asked my buddy at JP Morgan, I said, hey, I'm about to get an inheritance. It's X number of dollars. What should I do with it? Should I go put it in the market? Should I go put it? He's like, no, get yourself a money market account for a year, park it there for a year, get yourself 4%. And he said that's for him, though, if he recommends an investment to his guys that have tons of money and it loses money, they fire him and go to Chase or go somewhere else. And so for him, he can't lose money. So he has to always, if the market's going in a bull run, he tells them to go there or whatever. But like money market funds, what are they to you?
Yeah. So essentially, I look at these as a way, like if you're unsure about, the equities market, and you really just want something to hedge against inflation, and
Right.
you don't want to be, cash is king is what people typically say, but cash loses money if it's just sitting in your bank account. So I look at this as another way to, I don't want to get into anything right now. I'm just going to park it here so it doesn't lose value. To be completely simple, yeah.
And that's like super not sexy.
Yes, it is probably the least sexiest thing. Next to like a CD or like a savings account. This is basically as low as you can.
Right. Right. Which I guess is why he told me to do that, because he's like, I don't want you to
Yeah.
lose money, Simpson. I don't want you to
Yeah,
get.
a lot of those wealth management guys will probably, yeah, it's better to do those things. If you want to look for more sexy things, you gotta, go consult like hedge fund guys or private equity guys. Those are the
Yeah.
guys that are really like gung ho on let's go in on
Right, right. And that's the thing. Like with my friend Bobby, I mean, we talk candidly with each other. Like I've got real estate, I've got a side hustle, I've got a business, whatever. My wife works for Sabre. We have all these different streams of income. So he's like, look, you don't need to go do anything big, risky thing. Just take your returns, and when the market turns, let's go there. So last thing here, I got about a minute left with you. What recommendations would you give to my students on what their investing strategy should be?
Yeah, so like I said before, T triple Q, big believer in that. Definitely a great time to average down if you're already in, or if not, a good time to buy in. But if you have, let's say you have $500 in working capital, don't put all of it at once. Go in 200 $200 now, $200 in a month or two, because it's impossible to time the bottom. And it's very stupid to do so. So dollar cost averaging is an amazing strategy for trying to get into a long position without exposing yourself to a lot of risk.
Lin, man, you have been fantastic. This is great stuff. Love to hear from Ithaca, New York, and Cornell University, and all the incredible stuff you're doing. Thanks so much for being part of our class.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Simpson, for everything you've done. Yeah, never really got to meet back up with the incubator class, but all of us, me, Prabhav, Kevin, Veda, Ria, we all think the same thing. Yeah.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.